Hey YouTube, what's going on? I'm Snowflarky's Emos, and I'm here today to show off my Water Dragon Yu-Gi-Oh deck. Water Dragon is a GX era anime deck that, has some fan love for the fact that the Water Dragon itself does look pretty cool. And Legendary Duelist 1 that came out quite a few years ago gave us some new Water Dragon cards. And when those came out, I had a friend who gave me his holographic copies of Water Dragon, and as a result, I told him I would build the deck. So I picked up the cards, and I've always had this as like a fun, casual pick up and play deck, a way to get out Water Dragon, and by doing so, show off a cool anime favorite. So with that, let's get into card by card. Starting off with our monsters, I am playing one copy of Water Dragon Cluster. This is the new Water Dragon boss that came out in Legendary Duelists. It's a pretty sweet card. Can't be normal summon or set, must be special summon with a card effect of a bonding, spell, or trap card. And if this card is special summoned, you can activate this effect. Affect monsters your opponent currently controls. Cannot activate their effects for the rest of this turn. Also, change their attack to 0 until the end of this turn. So that's pretty cool. Um, you can negate the effect of effect monsters that your opponent has on board and make their attack 0, which does mean that if you do pull off the Water Dragon cluster, like be able to get it on board and already have some monsters, it does kind of make it pretty easy to OTK, which is pretty sweet. And then, of course, additionally, Water Dragon Cluster has a quick effect that you can tribute this card special summon 2 Water Dragon from your hand and or deck in defense position, ignoring their summoning conditions. So you can kind of dodge effects, tag out, thin your deck into 2 Water Dragons, which are pretty big and powerful. Water Dragon Cluster, of course, we only need one of this card because it has the ability to be summoned from the hand, the deck, or the graveyard, so we don't need to clog ourselves up with multiple copies because this card is just a complete brick, so we'll just play the one copy, hope we pull it out of our deck and don't draw it, but it is pretty sweet. Next up, I am playing 2 Water Dragon. Uh, this is just to have in the deck for Water Dragon Cluster's quick effect. Tributing Water Dragon Cluster allows us to summon this out. Now, of course, Water Dragon does have an effect that the attack of all fire and pyro type monsters becomes 0, which doesn't come up that often. And of course, when this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon 2 Hydrogeddon and 1 Oxygeddon. Neither of those effects are very useful in this deck because we aren't playing Hydrogeddon. And also just, that fire and pyro thing is so specific. So mostly you're just tagging these out into 2 additional 2800 bodies, which isn't bad for getting a lot of extra attack power on the board and thinning 2 cards out of your deck after you play the Water Dragon Cluster play, especially because that will get Cluster off the field in case you have the ability to resummon it again with your next bonding card. Next, I'm playing 3 copies of Duo Tyrion. Another one of the legendary duelist support. It's a 5-star dinosaur with 2000 attack. You can discard this card to add a bonding, spell, or trap from your hand, so that's pretty cool. You can add the bonding card to your hand from the deck. We definitely want to have this to search it when we're ready to go. And of course, if this card is normal or special summon, you can target a Hydrogeddon, Oxygeddon, or Duo Tyrion in your graveyard and special summon it. Also, another important effect, being able to kind of get that effect off is also very important to being able to have the materials accessible for us to go into our Water Dragon. So for that reason, it's a card we want to play 3 of. Next up, last of the Water Dragon cards I'm actually playing. I am playing 2 copies of Oxygeddon. Oxygeddon is just an 1800 attack 4-star dinosaur. When this card is destroyed as a result when battled by a pyro type monster and sent to the graveyard, inflict 800 points of damage to your opponent's life points. Not a big deal. That effect's never coming in handy. We're mostly just getting it in here because we need the name. But also as a 4-star dinosaur, it allows us to make some rank 4 dino plays with excessive material. So that is pretty good. Do note we are not playing Hydrogeddon in this build because I find it to be too cloggy, and the main summoning spell, the Bonding Duo, doesn't actually require us to play Hydrogeddon, so I've decided to axe it to play some more consistency stuff. Continuing on with our monsters, I'm playing 3 copies of Soul-Eating Oviraptor. All the little pieces of Oxygenon and Duotyrion are both dinosaurs, so I figured the perfect kind of engine to help supplement this deck and get it moving is a dinosaur package. So we're playing 3 Soul-Eating Oviraptor, 1800 4-star dino that searches dinosaur-type monsters, of course. Um, and of course, you either add them to the hand or send them to the graveyard, so it's pretty cool. Soul-Eating Oviraptor is one of the lifebloods of the modern dinosaur strategy, so it's good here. You can search just any of our dinos, and of course, you can target another level 4 or lower dinosaur type monster on the field, destroy it, then special summon a dinosaur type monster from your grave in defense position, which is pretty cool. Gets you materials for a rank 4 play and can be pretty useful with the Lost World spell and the token, and of course your baby Sarasaur. Lots of combos you can do. It's a great card. Next up, I'm playing 2 copies of Scrap Raptor. Scrap Raptor is a nice level 4 dinosaur that we have access to. It's a tuner monster, which is pretty cool. Gives some synchro options available to the dinosaur style deck, including the Dino Wrestler Spinosavate, which is just a personal favorite card of mine. And of course, Scrap Raptor has an effect that says you can target a monster you control and destroy it, which, destroying your own monsters is something you oftentimes want to do in this deck, because there's lots of effects you can get off from your baby Sarasaurs and things like that. So that's a pretty cool option to have. And of course, if this card is destroyed by the effect of a scrap card, you can add Scrap Factory or 1 non-tuner scrap monster from your deck to your hand. So definitely an option. I'm not really utilizing it in this build just because I'm more focused on the Water Dragon, but traditional dino stuff probably likes that for play extensions. But here's just a level 4 name that has the ability to destroy a card, which is pretty cool. Next up, I'm playing a copy of Giant Rex. Giant Rex is a 4-star dino that cannot attack directly. If this card is banished, you can special summon this card, and a card gains 200 attack for each of your banished dinosaur type monsters. You can only use the effect of Giant Rex once per turn. So this is basically our recycling level 4 dino that we can constantly get back on the field for extra deck plays on follow-up turns. So it's pretty good in that regard, and for that reason, we want to have it. Next, playing a copy of Miscellaneousaur, the all-powerful dinosaur itself. A Miscellaneousaur is pretty awesome. During either player's main phase, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard. During this main phase, dinosaur-type monsters you control are unaffected by your opponent's card effects. So that gives your dinosaurs lots of protection, gives them protects you from having their effects be disrupted. Just a very powerful card, limited for a good reason. But it doesn't end there with Miscellaneousaur, because you can banish this card and a number of dinosaur-type monsters from your graveyard to special summon a dinosaur-type monster from your deck with a level equal to the total number of monsters banished. So, if there's this card and 3 other dinos, you can just pull a level 4 dino out the deck, which is pretty sweet. You can use it to pull, it's easy to pull out any of your level 2 dinos like Baby Sarasaur, because you just need 1 other card, and that allows you to go further into your play, which is pretty sweet, and that is just a pretty good card. Yep, very powerful dinosaur. Next up, I'm playing 3 copies of Baby Sarasaur. Baby Sarasaur is pretty sweet. It's a 2-star dino, so it's easy to pull out with Miscellaneousaur. And of course, if this card is destroyed by a card effect and sent to the graveyard, special summon a level 4 or lower dinosaur type monster from your deck. Awesome. That can get us into Oviraptor, that can pull out a Giant Rex, that can pull us out a Scrap Raptor, that can pull us out Oxygeddon. Plenty of good targets for it, and just keeps things moving. Next up, I'm playing 1 copy of Pteranodon. It's like Baby Sarasaur, but a little more sketch. If this card is destroyed by card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon a level 4 or higher dinosaur type monster from your deck, but it cannot attack this turn. So it still gets us all access to all the level 4s, which is mainly what we want, but we can also pull out level 5 or higher dinosaur type monsters, which does come in handy enough to warrant 1 copy of this, because usually we'll be destroying something like this from the deck. Next up, I'm playing 2 copies of Ultimate Conductor Tyranno. This is the big dinosaur type boss monster. It's 3,500 attack. It's easy to summon because it has to be special summoned from your hand by banishing 2 dinosaur type monsters from your grave. Easy, especially when one of those cards, like Giant Rex, is something we want to banish anyway for good effect. And then, of course, it has some great effects on top of being 3,500 attack. Once per turn, during either player's main phase, you can destroy 1 monster in your hand and or field. And if you do, change all face-up monsters your opponent controls to face-down defense position, which is a pretty disruptive effect. Pretty annoying for your opponent to deal with. And then, of course, Ultimate Conductor Tyranno can attack all monsters your opponent controls, and if it attacks a defense position monster, you can inflict 1,000 damage to your opponent and send that card to the graveyard. So it has a non-destruction removal, a way of getting rid of defense position monsters, gets some burn damage. Pretty nice. It's just a incredibly powerful card, one of the coolest boss monsters ever just given to a monster type. And for that, we definitely want to play it in here for helping with big finishes. And last up for the monsters, I am playing 1 copy of Dino Wrestler Pankratops. Pankratops is an incredibly good card. If your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can special summon this card from your hand, which is awesome. It's a 2,600 attack dino. And, of course, you can, once per turn, you contribute a Dino Wrestler type monster to target a card your opponent controls and destroy it. That does include Pankratops, so it's just an easy way to bait out and negate, force a removal, just summoning a big 2,600 attack body for free. And of course, the fact that it's a dinosaur helps a lot with some of these other effects. So Pankratops definitely easily finds a home in this deck. And that is it for the monsters. Not your traditional dinosaur lineup, but like I said, it's because this deck is more focused on Water Dragon, even if that means it just makes it a worse version of a dinosaur deck. Next, let's go into the spell cards. I am playing 2 copies of Bonding D2O. Now, this is the only card I'm playing that actually lets me summon out the Water Dragon, but that's okay. Duotyrion can search this card, so it's pretty easy to get, and Duotyrion is, of course, very searchable through Fossil Dig, through Aviraptor, whatever I'm looking for. So basically, Bonding D2O says tribute 2 Duotyrion and 1 Oxygeddon that are either in your hand or on your field to special summon a Water Dragon or Water Dragon cluster from your hand, deck, or graveyard. So this is why we're only playing 1 copy of Cluster, because it can pull it even from the graveyard, which is pretty sweet. If Water Dragon or Water Dragon Cluster is sent from the field to your graveyard while this card is in your graveyard, you can add this card to your hand. So that does give you the ability to recycle it, so that if you get another Duotyrion Oxygeddon combo, you can pull out Water Dragon again. And that is pretty sick. I feel like this is the best way to get this card out. It means you have to run less bricks. The other new one they made is a trap card, which makes it pretty slow, even though that does give you the ability to summon Water Dragon Cluster on your opponent's turn and disrupt their play. But I don't know. It's hard enough to get this card out already, so the less bricks I have to run is better, and so this is what I have settled on for the time being. Next up, I'm playing 3 copies of Lost World. This is the dinosaur field spell, and one of my favorite field spells in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! That's pretty cool. All monsters on the field lose 500 attack and defense except dinosaur-type monsters. I really like that effect. That's an interesting way to do a buff. Instead of just giving your dinosaurs 500, it literally just makes everything else lose 500, which is pretty cool. Now, do note that if Lost World is on the field, that will decrease the attack of your Water Dragon and Water Dragon Cluster, because they are a sea serpent, which is a little unfortunate, but it's not too punishing, because usually it's already pretty big, and usually, unless your opponent's playing a dinosaur deck, all their stuff is also lowered, and the pluses of Lost World just make it so we can't really worry about that too much. Once per turn, if a dinosaur-type monster is normal or special summoned, except during the damage step, you could special summon a Jirac Egg token to your opponent's field and defense position. This is just a 0 attack, 0 defense level 1 token, which is pretty cool. But that will allow you to utilize this next effect. Once per turn, if a normal monster on the field would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you may destroy a dinosaur type monster in your hand and or deck instead. So that token you summoned to your opponent's side of the field is a normal monster. So if you attack it and destroy it, or if you try to destroy it with Soul Eating Oviraptor's effect, you can trigger Lost World to destroy a monster from your hand or deck instead. That'll usually be your baby Ceratosaur or your Pteranodon based on what you want to get out, and that will pull you out more monsters, and that is pretty much what we want to do. Um, also, while your opponent has a token, they can't target other monsters with card effects except tokens, so that's pretty cool. That means they gotta do something with their token before they can start targeting your monsters. So that's pretty useful and comes in handy. And yep, Lost World, good field spell. Next, the one copy of Terraforming, of course, to search our Lost World. Adds a field spell from the deck to the hand. Next, I am playing 3 copies of Fossil Dig. This is a card that can add a level 6 or lower dinosaur type monster from our deck to our hand. So that searches every dino we play except Ultimate Conductor and Pankratops. So just use this to get whichever one you need. You need Oviraptor, you need Duotyrion, you need your Oxygeddon to make the Water Dragon play. We can get it. Also not once per turn, which is pretty sweet. Next, I'm playing 1 copy of Gold Sark. Gold Sark is, you banish a card from your deck face up. During the second standby phase, after this card's activation, you add that card to your hand. But with Gold Sark, what we do is we banish Giant Rex, and then Giant Rex summons itself right away. So that's pretty cool, and justifies it enough that I'm glad to run Gold Sark as a one of. Next up, I'm playing 1 copy of Raigeki. Raigeki just destroys all monsters our opponent controls. It's easy to summon a lot of monsters and clear for game, so if my opponent is vulnerable to Raigeki, which I play this deck casually in a casual group, so it's a lot easier for a card like Raigeki to be effective. But essentially, you can think whatever board breaker you want to play, having that is pretty good. Because if you leave your opponent open, you can easily finish them off in one go. Next up is Foolish Burial. This is a card I like in this deck because it can get our Miscellaneousaur out of the deck into the graveyard if we want to use it to summon. It can put a Giant Rex in the grave if we want to banish it for Conductor Tyranno. It can banish any dinosaur that we want to special summon off of Oviraptor's effect. It can get us a Duotyrion or Oxygeddon in the grave so that if we're summoning a Duotyrion, we can get it from the graveyard and special summon it. So just a number of options we have that make me want to play that card. And then last for the spells, I am playing 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance. Now, while you certainly will make extra deck monsters in this, I just max out all the extra deck monsters at 3 copies, and they're all pretty good. So I'm glad to, try to get extra card advantage off of Extravagance. We banish 3 to 6 random cards from our extra deck face down, and we draw 1 card for every 3 that we did. So it just becomes Pot of Greed in exchange for 3 extra deck cards. You'll always be left with something pretty good still, so glad to play it. And that's it for our spell cards. Last, we're moving on to our trap cards, and while not optimal, I am playing 3 copies of Solemn Judgment. Solemn Judgment is a card I quite like in Dinosaurs because I think it's very fun to set up a Lagia or 2 and then also to have an extra copy of Solemn Judgment just for another Say No card. Volsor Lagia, of course, is a Solemn Judgment on a body. So combined with Solemn Judgment, just having 2 absolute no cards on the field can be very harmful to our opponent, especially if they play it right, especially if their deck is fragile, just basically force them to pass a turn. You can play any trap card, any hand trap, any board breaker in here rather. Probably a little more optimal, but I enjoy Solemn Judgment for that play. And for that reason, I am playing it at 3. Cards like this, always adjust based on what you're playing against, what you're trying to beat, etc. And that is it for our main deck. Going into our extra deck, I have built this extra deck with Extravagance in mind, so I am playing 3 copies of Volsor Lagia. This is the Solemn Judgment on a body. It just requires 2 level 4 dinosaur type monsters to make, and then during either player's turn when a monster would be normal or special summon or a spell or trap card is activated, I can detach 2 materials from it to negate the summon or activation and destroy that card. So it's pretty cool. Any two dinosaurs can make this card, and it's just a big say no. Now do note that this is a dragon type monster, so your Lost World will be decreasing it by 500 attack, but once again, something that's not a big deal. And to make sure I always keep at least one in the extra deck, I am playing 3 copies. Next up is Evolzor Dolka, which I am playing 2 of. I would be playing 3 copies of this, but I'm still waiting to pick up a third one here. So when I pick up a third one, I'll be subbing out one of these later rank 4 XZs for Dolka. Dolka is pretty great because it requires 2 level 4 dinosaur type monsters, and during either player's turn, when a monster effect is activated, detach a material from it, negate the activation, and destroy that card. And that's not once per turn. So that is pretty good. 2 monster effects oftentimes makes it better to go into than Lagia against many decks that are all monster effect reliant. And so for that reason, Dolka is pretty solid. Next, I am playing 3 copies of Dino Wrestler Giga Spinosavate. If you decide not to play Scrap Raptor, then of course this card can't really be summoned in this deck. And I will admit this is not an optimal extra deck card to be playing, but it's a really fun card. It requires a dinosaur tuner and a non-tuner monster. If this card battles, your opponent cannot activate spell or trap cards until the end of the damage step, which is pretty cool. Your opponent's monsters cannot target monsters for attacks, except this one, also pretty cool. And then once per turn, you can just target a monster your opponent controls and destroy it. That is pretty cool, especially if your opponent has a egg token still on the field, and you can use Lost World to summon either further. And then, of course, if this card would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can destroy a card you control instead. Another great effect that we can use to pop destruction. So, pretty cool boss monster that dinos can access now with Scrap Raptor, and that just makes it pretty awesome to have. A boss monster I enjoy a lot. One of my favorite synchros in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! So for that reason, I am playing the 3 of it. Next up, I'm playing just some rank 4 good stuff to supplement my extra deck. One is Baguska, requires 2 level 4s. You summon it in defense. It puts all monsters in defense, and defense position monsters can't activate their effects. So it gives you skill drain for a turn or 2 because you do have to detach material during your standby phase's cost, and if you can't, he's destroyed. So you only get 2 turns, but can help stall if you want to get an extra card or 2, which is pretty nice. 1 copy of Castel, the Sky Blaster Musketeer. This card, you just detach 2 materials to shuffle a face-up card back into the deck. Pretty cool. 2 copies of Tornado Dragon. Since this is a casual deck, I do run into a lot more back row and just trap card based decks when I play it. So Tornado Dragon is a good rank for XZs to have. 2 level 4s, once per turn, quick effect, detach a material to pop a spell or trap card on the field. So pretty awesome. 2 copies means I usually keep 1 after an extravagance play. 1 copy of Abyss Dweller, 2 level 4s, detach a material, quick effect during either player's turn, and my opponent cannot activate effects in their graveyard this turn. Pretty sweet. 1 copy of Heartland Draco. This is an interesting card I like to have access to in a deck like this, where I do a lot of damage on 1 turn, and maybe I have an OTK'd my opponent, and they set up something that's annoying to play around. Well, if I can just make 2 level 4s, make Heartland Draco, I can use Heartland Draco's effect, detach a material, select Heartland Draco, and then it can attack directly. And it's got 2,000 attack, so nice little finisher. Comes up sometimes, can probably be swapped. Probably would be the next copy of Dolka, in all honesty. And of course, XZ's decks, you gotta play it. Divine Arsenal, A, Zeus, Sky Thunder. Very powerful. If XZ monster you control's attacks, you can just then throw Zeus on top of it, detach 2 materials from it during either player's turn, and send all other cards on the field to the graveyard. So very disruptive, very powerful, especially in a more casual setting where I play this deck. Zeus just kind of curb stomps, and for that reason, it finds its home here. But that's it for the extra deck. So that is it for my Water Dragon deck profile. Very fun pick up and play deck that is good to have. It's really cool to summon out Water Dragon, especially with having the hollow versions of the little Water Dragon. And it's just very cool. And of course, dinos means that, even if I'm not getting Water Dragon off, dinos are a pretty solid engine that you can certainly get wins off of it. So pretty fun. It's very cool and nice to have in my arsenal of decks to play. So let me know what you think. Are you a big fan of Water Dragon? I kind of wish they would do something for like the Fire and Ice Dragon like this, which would be pretty sweet. Uh, like Frost and Flame Dragon, I believe it's called. Things like that would be pretty awesome. Big fan, but I appreciate you checking out. Let me know what you think, and let me know if you're playing Water Dragon with any other decks other than dinosaurs, because I thought about doing something with Legendary Ocean and it, which I thought may have some potential, but I haven't come up with anything that I feel like is better than this yet. So we'll talk about that later, though. Catch y'all in the next one.